tip I have that's more like on this linguistic level, that's beyond the metacognition and beyond your approach as a teacher, in terms of research, but just what you choose, like what kind of content you choose to expose your students to. I think my second major tip is to expose your students to a variety of Englishes from around the globe. And some people are calling this world English. But I think we really have to keep pushing our students to go beyond this native speaker of English is the model. This world is very rich, it's a very diverse place, and it's important that we develop skills to really listen more effectively to each other. And learning to listen, doesn't have to entail just listening to students from the same background, because it's easier maybe linguistically to understand them, that they're more intelligible, therefore it's more comprehensible to you. But also people have very different background experiences. And if you come across someone who says, something that's very different from what you're comfortable with, there's a wall we can just put up that says, okay, we're done here. And this is where our intercultural communication training comes in, where, okay, Sharon, you just said something that I actually didn't like, and I'm secretly judging you for this. So in some ways I'm nodding my head, but I'm actually waiting for you to stop talking because I'm ready to move on to talk to someone else who feels way more comfortable for me to communicate with. I think what happens in the classroom when I've brought in different Englishes, English, even just not an American English accent, but when I've brought in someone with a British English accent, or an Australian, or someone from Sudan giving a talk, a Sudanese presenter using English, at say like a United Nations panel as a panelist. These are important topics. We have a very global perspective of things and challenges that everyone, I think, cares, not everyone, but many people care very deeply about. Yeah. So you have to get your students to think, oh, I'm willing to accept these forms of English, even though this person sounds different from you, my American English
because
teacher.
That's the majority of people who are speaking English now are non-native speakers of English.
Absolutely. We have about 350 million native speakers of English, but the world has over 7 billion people in it. So the majority of people, the billions of people that are using English are using it as a lingua franca, right? Or as an English as a medium of instruction, and university is on the rise. A lot of people are coming to this as adults who need really conscious attention to how to decode. And it can't just be in the form of like what I call unidirectional listening, which is like a mock lecture. I consider TED Talks a mock lecture. And instructors love TED Talks because they're very modern, and they have such a wide variety of topics, and it can be very interesting for the teacher too, because they're learning something as students. It's more like content focused. But teachers always tell me, oh, they're so hard to prepare, and I don't always know what questions to ask. I don't have time to use a TED Talk. I don't have time to listen to it ahead of time and come up with the questions. I mean, it's tricky. And it's also, TED Talks are very scripted and performed. So there isn't a lot of variety. There isn't any exchange. So I guess that would be my next tip or final tip is, try to think about the mode of listening that your students are listening to, not just a unidirectional mock lecture from a textbook or a TED Talk, not just the natural discourse that takes place in the classroom because we're all so sympathetic to one another, but, panel discussions from the United Nations, like a panel of people, or fast-paced, rapid news program where there isn't any kind of subtitle attached to it or transcript, where there's rapid talk, or, interviewing somebody on the street and an unexpected person emerges with a different, voice and sound. So I think that's also important. And in that, I call that multi-party talk. I think by exposing students more to multi-party talk, I think it's important too to learn that it's okay to interrupt people, and there's a polite way to do it, but everyone has a right to share and to contribute in the conversation. And if you're from a cultural background where that's considered very rude, and you never share what you have to say or what you're thinking, right, that's not being an active participant, more of this like global, a global citizen. And I think everyone needs to know, if we're doing English as a medium of instruction global level, then we need to be training our learners how to more effectively take in information, and also in order to know how to enter the conversation. Where's the pause, and how to get in there and get their voices heard. So
thank you so much for talking with me today, Jennifer. It's
my pleasure.
It's not every day that you get to talk to someone who's actually done research in listening, because like we said, very few people are into that field. Everyone goes for writing. Everyone goes for
writing.
Speaking.
No. Yeah. Well, it's just easier to evaluate, right? We're all trained in from our own programs how to. There's a rubric for how to evaluate an essay. There's a rubric for how to evaluate a presentation. But what is the rubric for listening? You know, what does that look like? So, and it's a very complicated topic. There's a lot of moving parts. It's the top down, like we talked about, the background. It's the bottom up decoding, but it's a very interactive thing with a lot of moving parts to it. So I've just shared a few bits and pieces of it. So thank you for listening to me, Sharon. It's great to talk to you and see you, and I'm happy to share more sources of inspiration with you.
And I'll put them up on the slides after this so people can take a look at them and do their own research.